Oh, there you are. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a big chunk we're just going to edit out later, hopefully. Just big dead air time. All right. Okay, well, since we are broadcasting and have been for, I don't know how many minutes now, 3 or 4. Well, wait, I know I've got a friend who's coming in. I don't see her yet on the view screen. And so I thought I would just show you some of the things I've collected along the last couple of weeks, just because you don't get to see this stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things we have to do as authors is get our swag ready to give out. And this is my bookmark.
Nice.
And then it has, so this is, right here, is tatting, so lace tatting, and that's what my character learns to do. I have a friend who's very talented, and so she created this bookmark for me.
Oh my
And the
God.
instructions are on the back. So I hope people will keep my bookmarks just for the instructions.
Exactly.
And then, of course, is the bookmark, or the postcard with stuff on the back. This was from my launch party. June 3rd, Changing Hands. Then I had flyers for my launch party right here. Oh, somebody just came in. We partner with Dress for Success to shine a little bit of light on the work that they do, and the Phoenix Art Museum donated a couple of tickets to their Hollywood red carpet event. What else? Oh, this is some fun stuff. Okay, so here is my book. And look, Garrison Keillor was right there.
Nice.
So that's kind of fun. What else? Oh, and then, let's see. This past weekend was Phoenix Comic Con, which I'd never even considered going to a Comic Con, but since I have a fantasy novel, I guess it kind of tied right in, and they're very good at having local authors. So here is my pass, my Spidey pass.
Ooh.
And then I had my kids with me, so they had a sidekick.
Aw, that's great.
And then this one was really fun. So this is the brochure, and you'll see my, how do we do this? See, there's my picture, and then here's the guy from Arrow,
Yeah.
and then I got Stan Lee right there.
Nice.
So isn't that funny? It's like when you're in high school and you get your yearbook and you look to see, you know, who the cute boys are around you.
Kids are.
So that's just some of the stuff that I'm collecting along the journey.
Awesome.
Okay, so I see we've got some viewers that are starting to come in now that were organized. I'm just going through and showing Stacy some of the stuff that I'm collecting, my little author memorabilia and scrapbook type stuff. What else do I have here? Oh, so one thing that authors have to learn to do is talk in front of people, which is very different from just writing by yourself in the computer. So I joined Toastmasters. And look, they give ribbons.
Best speaker.
Yeah.
I like the enthusiasm for it. That sounds like a
I won that this past weekend, partly for going out of our little Toastmasters box and speaking out in the public. So they give you an enthusiasm award. They call it a spark plug. Here's my little stamp. So when I do book signings, I stamp the inside.
That's great.
I can't draw. I tried doing doodles of a dress, and sometimes it looked like a dress, and sometimes it didn't, so I got a stamp. What else? I think that's it of my little collections.
That's awesome.
So are you ready for me to grill you?
Yeah. Always.
So what I was thinking, authors like to know the timeline, you know, how long it takes, what the steps were. So this is my little timeline, and I thought maybe you could fill in the blanks that I don't know about, and I'll fill in for you what you didn't know about. So here we have November 2008, NaNoWriMo. That's when I started writing the novel, the first draft. Nano novels can be a little messy, so it took a couple of years of rewriting, adding more to get to something where I could start querying. And then I entered the query, rejection, revise, query, rejection, revise. October 2012, I went to SCBWI in Arizona, and that's when Liz was in town and spoke about Entangled Teen. I had never heard of you guys before, but I thought, ooh, I really like this business model, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the business model because it is very different and I think very editor friendly. I don't know.
Definitely. Well, I mean, it depends on each editor. You know, I came from a very traditional publishing house called Bloomsbury in New York, and started working for Entangled in 2012. Um, and what appealed to me about the company was the fact that it was so non-traditional, and it was almost like I was taking a chance on myself and on my own ability to pick great books in that, you know, I had a salary at my last job, but Entangled doesn't pay salaries. Each editor is paid royalties on the sale of our books, which is great, I think, for our authors because, you know, we're as invested in the books as you are. You know, not to say that I wasn't invested in my books previously, but money is a very strong it's a very strong motivator, and it sort of requires there to be this no book left behind sort of idea to what we do. You know, I don't know how many hours I spent working on your book, but probably between Teresa and I, Teresa's the associate editor, who had also worked on the book with me, you know, maybe 40 hours, maybe 80 hours. I mean, it was a lot of hours, probably from the time that, you know, we'll go over the timeline of how many times we read it and, you know, going through acquisitions and things like that. But, you know, when you think about time equals money, you want to make sure that you're going to get an investment back on, you know, a return on your investment of time. So we feel really strongly about every book that we acquire, and want to make sure that we're going to make a success out of it. So that was sort of what made me excited about Entangled, was that I was like, I think I'm a pretty decent editor. I think I pick good books. I like the idea of going to a company that will reward that, and that also has this feeling of sort of camaraderie and family, that we're all sort of in it together. So I assume that that was some of what Liz talked about when you first met her. Also, you know, we feel we have a very competitive contract for our authors. We want to make sure that our authors are happy, which I'm sure any author would enjoy hearing. So we try to keep both of our authors and our editors happy in any way that we can.
Yeah, that's exactly what she talked about, and I thought that was a really neat opportunity for editors, especially if you end up getting a big hit with one of your authors, and then you get rewarded as well, and I think that's really neat.
Exactly. Yeah. This year was my first year that I had some books hit a bestseller list, and it's just, you know, like I call the author and she's crying and I'm crying and we're crying, and it's just, you know, just an amazing thing to sort of feel. It's almost like what I imagine people feel like with their agents. You know, as an editor, I always felt like that agent-author connection for the authors who have agents was always a little bit closer. You know, they often get thanked first in acknowledgments, things like that. I'm like, well, you know, come on, we worked super closely together too. But there are certainly a lot of parts of the process where an editor and an author are maybe a little bit at odds. You know, which a little bit I've never understood, because we're all kind of in it for the same ultimate goal. We all want to sell as many books as possible, but certainly contract negotiations, cover design, edits, sometimes there can be a little bit of tension, whereas it seems like the author and the agent are always 100% on the same team. So it's been kind of nice at Entangled that I feel like a little bit more we're on the same team. And that we're all working towards the exact same goal. So that's been fun.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that perspective before, but yeah, I guess you're right. They can almost gang up on the editor.
True, but at the end of the day, we're always like, we all want the same thing. We all want to have
on the same team, everyone. Yeah, pretty good. So I queried in November. I don't know how to do this, and then June, I got the call. So at Entangled, the call is not really a phone call. It's an email, at least for the most part. I mean, you and I have, we tried the Google Hangout yesterday just really quickly to make sure the technical stuff worked, even though we had a glitch to start with. But most things are done through email, which works really well for me. I'm a homeschool mom, so I've got my kids around all the time. It's way easier to just jot a quick email than find time where it's quiet that I can make a phone call. So in between, so my query in November and then the June 23 saying, yeah, we want your book, which was an email that took my breath away, by the way. It was just really fun. What is that process in between the query and the call?
So first of all, I'm almost a little embarrassed that it took that long. Since at the very least we try to get back to authors within about a few months. Not necessarily. I mean, so there's a more drawn out process when the answer is yes than when the answer is no. But it's funny that that I'm sort of having to acknowledge that that took like 8 months. So generally, the way that it works, your query would have come into us through Submittable, which is our online submission process. And you probably, saw a little bit of the process. Some of it is actually visible by the authors, which is pretty cool. You can see that someone's received it. You can see if we've moved around, someone's accepted it. I think Teresa had snatched it up pretty quickly. Since I don't think it was sent to a specific editor, or if it was made available to all the editors.
Yeah, I think I queried just before Submittable came into being, and to Liz because she was at the conference, and then it got put into Submittable. Somebody did that, not me.
Yes, that may have been part of the delay. So the story is a slightly younger, very sweet YA. Historical, which is right up my alley. Not so much up Liz's alley. She tends to go for the slightly edgier, darker, paranormal, that sort of stuff. So if you had queried her or just had sent it in, she probably would not have gone in and snatched it. So Teresa had found it and read it over maybe a month or two. We all sort of have a team of interns who read alongside us. So she had a whole bunch of intern reports on it, which would be maybe funny for you to see. Clearly they were all yeses, which is sort of the first step in going through the process. So then Teresa emailed me and said, I have the submission. All my interns are going crazy over it. I really love it. But I need a senior, so she's a junior level editor, and Entangled, we sort of work together with the junior and senior editors in sort of a mentoring program. So she sent it to me and said, I think you would like this. You edit, Rachel Harris's YAs, which are a similar sort of vein. So then I had it for maybe another month or two. Finally sat down, read it, was like, oh my God, I can't believe I waited so long. This is great. I love it. And then we went through the actual acquisition process, which generally involves, so I'm the editorial director of Entangled Teen, so because I was also the senior editor, we were able to skip the one step of getting the editorial director sign off on it, since I had already signed off on it. We create what's called an acquisition proposal form, which has a whole bunch of, pretty much any information that someone who has not read the book would need to know. So, why do we think this book will sell? Who is the author? What is sort of her platform? If she has any other books out, what are they? The blurb. What are some other books out there that have sold well that we think this could be comparable to? A lot of marketing. We tend not to focus on, oh, but I really loved it. It has to be more, very hard and fast. Why do we think that this will sell? And this information eventually gets funneled later into something that's called a tip sheet that goes to Macmillan, who is our distributor. And they are very sales focused, being a sales team. They don't care at all about what the book is. They just want to know, why will it sell? What is the platform? What are the selling points? So it's good at this stage to really think about these sorts of things, like, what can we compare this to? I think that I compared this to like Jessica Day George and Shannon Hale, who are two Bloomsbury authors that I used to work with back in the day, and they are also distributed by Macmillan, so that was helpful in that Macmillan's very familiar with those series, and they're able to say, okay, we know how those did and how great those did. we know how to pitch this. So at that point, it goes to sort of the wider acquisition team, which has changed a little bit, but generally is Liz, the associate publisher Heather, sometimes marketing will weigh in, things like that. If it's a very large deal, like a multiple book deal, sometimes we need to get more approvals. This was a single title, so we just did the one contract, and then it sits for a little while until they've been able to weigh in. And once we get word that they've approved it, then we get to send you that exciting yes, we're going to go to contract. That was going on for 8 months.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. When the answer is yes, you're willing to wait. That's fine.
Exactly.
Okay, so then the rest of my timeline. So we sent the contract in July, signed it in November, January we started edits, and June it was published. So that January to June, that was awfully fast for me.
Yeah.
Is that normal for Entangled, that quick editing period?
It depends. I think that so at the point that we're signing the contract, and you'll remember this, is usually when we set a pub date. And with print, it's a little different than with digital. Many of our authors will say, we signed the contract, we're editing, and a month later the book is out. It's a very, very fast process. With print, it's a much more drawn out process because there are many different middlemen involved. We have to pitch it to Macmillan. I just this past week pitched our summer 2015 list. So we're more than a year out in terms of pitching a list to them. And pretty much once that happens, the list is set. They start creating a catalog, they start getting covers together, they pitch to Barnes & Noble, and once all of those things are in motion, it's very hard to move. So this was a book that I really wanted out in anticipation of the new school year, Cinderella's Dress, I mean. So I wanted it out at the beginning of the summer to capitalize on both summer reading and going into, August school time. So we had pitched it to Macmillan while the contract was in negotiations. Probably, if we had sent the contract in June, maybe in July or August. And so, but we weren't able to really start the editing process until it was all approved. So, once it was done in November, then, we started working on the edits, which, generally take about a month or two, depending on our schedules. Teresa and I were working together. There was the holidays in there. So then we got you the first edits in January, which I would say was a little bit of a tighter turnaround, but not unheard of for us. We tend to do most of our, pre-pub outreach digitally, so that sort of helps a little bit with the process. And this year is our first year doing ALA, which I know you will be in attendance at, and we'll be giving out copies of the book there to sort of help what I was saying earlier about, wanting to get the librarians, wanting to get it into schools in time for the new school year in August. So I would say sort of yes and no. It maybe seems like a short amount of time, but in actuality, it's a long timeline. A lot to the process.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that, so from 2008 to 2014, the creative, yeah, that was great. Well, those were kind of the questions I had for you. I have a couple other ones. Did you have any other behind the scenes that you're wondering from me? I'm just looking at my time, and it's, been about 20 minutes.
Sure. One thing that I wanted to mention was I thought that we had a very interesting cover back and forth for this book. I think that we ended up with the most amazing cover, and I've seen a lot of people talking online about how gorgeous it is. So this cover artist, her name is Alexandra. She's fantastic. So what we do is we have our authors submit a cover art form with sort of your vision of the book. And Shonna came up with an amazing long list of visuals from Pinterest and other places that were really helpful in having in Alexandra, knowing exactly what to do. And we wanted
I just
it to
wanted a
have,
big fancy dress.
yes, exactly. Who doesn't? And that was always our goal. We wanted it to have a bit of a historical feel, but not, really hit you over the head with it either. And so originally we had a different girl on there with a different dress, which we were all really liked, and we all seemed happy with it. And Donna was not as happy with it, and I'm really glad that she pushed us, actually. This is being recorded, so now I'm afraid every author is going to come back to this as visual evidence that I'm okay with you pushing us on your covers. But, it was a bit of a simpler dress. It didn't quite fit the description as much. But it was really challenging to find a photo, that both had a sort of historical type hairstyle, worked for the look of the book. And this was a photo that we ended up finding on a site called DeviantArt, which is a site I go to pretty frequently when I can't find anything in stock photography. It's a photographer's website, where people just upload their artwork, not necessarily for purchase. So when you find something that you love, it can be really hit or miss whether the photographer is checking the site, is even willing to sell you the photo, has a model release, et cetera, et cetera. So I found this photo. We all loved it. I can't remember if I sent it to Shonna ahead of time because I knew if the photographer never wrote back, I didn't want her to fall in love with it. But I reached out to the photographer. Thank goodness she wrote back within a couple days. She's in the UK, and the model is her daughter. So she was quite willing to grant us rights to permission for the photo as long as we sent her a copy of the book. So her daughter could see herself on a book cover. So that was, I think, totally worth the extra work because it turned out just gorgeous.
Yes, definitely. I love the cover, and getting so many compliments on it. It's incredible.
Well, you definitely set us up in the book talking about over and over how amazing this dress is and how no one's seen anything like it, and you set the bar high. But I think we delivered in the end.
I'm looking to see if there's a spot. I set up like a Q&A, but I have no idea where it is. I don't know how to...
There's the paragraph, but...
Someone says, I want to buy a tatted bookmark.
Right?
You learn a tat, you can make it yourself. I just opened it on the left-hand side. There's like a Q&A thing, and then it opens up on the right-hand side.
If you could just read them out loud, because I don't see them. Maybe it's just you.
There's just some comments. There's no questions.
Okay.
You guys have any questions? We just have a couple of viewers here. Hello. I'll let them think for a minute. What else do I have? Yeah, I had on here the queer process, the cover, because we did do the change, and that was neat. A lot of your editing changes, I think there's a couple I pushed back on, but a lot of them I would say, oh, I want to, and you would say, oh, but I think this, and I'd say, oh, okay. So I pretty much went with whatever you said.
I feel like our editing process was pretty standard in terms of, back and forth. I think that, I've worked with some authors who pretty much just take every suggestion that I have, and you don't necessarily want that either because you want to feel like they're really thinking about it. And if you see a different way to resolve an edit or disagree with a question, it should be a back and forth. I think not necessarily always. Oh, you want to do this? Okay. Because sometimes editors will suggest things and then you'll try them and you feel like it's not quite as good, and that's fine too. It's a process, and being able to sort of talk through certain changes is part of it. So.
Well, I really liked having a different perspective because I have this whole story in my mind, and it's not always on the page exactly what's in my mind. So it's helpful to have someone else who isn't expecting the things that I know are supposed to happen, and sometimes I didn't write them in.
Exactly. I find that I say this a lot to authors where I'll ask a question and they'll be like, oh, that was, this about the guy, and well, didn't that come across? And I'm like, no, not really. That's why I asked the question. Then it's just as simple as taking this thing that clearly was in your head and in your world that you had thought about and just hadn't necessarily come across 100% on the page, and just inserting it somewhere. You know, everything doesn't have to be a huge overhaul. It's just a matter of thinking, okay, where are these little places where I can incorporate these things to. I think that the most important thing an editor does is just question, you know, well, why is that the case? And well, why does she feel that way? And what is her motivation, etc.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, that is, I think, all that I had. I see, I just lots of comments about the gorgeous cover and the swag. Thanks, guys.
Yes, and if anyone's going to be at ALA, come find the Entangled booth. We'll have Shonna there, and we'll maybe have some of that swag to give away, as well as some books.
That sounds good. All right, well, everyone, thank you for attending the After the Tour Author Editor Tell All. You can always ask questions on the blog. You can follow Stacy on Twitter and ask her questions. She's very open to answer anything you want to know.
Absolutely.
All right, well, thank you so much, Stacy. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and I will see that this gets up on YouTube. I'll try and edit out that big chunk at the beginning where we couldn't get the camera working.
Great, thank you, Shonna.
All right, bye-bye.